If Baldur's Gate 3 is your first introduction to D&D, it's not hard to see why decision paralysis is possible. BG3 does a great job of making everything a little bit easier, but if this is your first time, there's still a ton to learn. You're making a bunch of decisions from character creation onwards that'll impact your whole playthrough, and you don't want to get the fundamentals wrong. So in this series, I'm going to go over some basic character options for those of you who have yet to dip your toe into D&D. The focus for these videos is on making the most simple but effective builds possible. They won't be the most powerful builds you can make, but they'll definitely hang with the crowd and they'll help you get familiarized with the game. We're also focusing on the combat tier of play instead of exploration or social encounters. Across the series, we're going to make one melee character, one ranged character, one damage spellcaster, and a healer. It doesn't get much simpler than that. In these videos, we'll only be guiding you through the first few levels. By the time you reach level 5, you should hopefully have a feel for how to play the game and what you want to try. In this video, we'll be creating a melee Barbarian, which will let you get up in people's faces and do some serious damage in melee. As stated, for our melee character, we're going to be going with the Barbarian. Barbarians are amongst the simplest classes in D&D 5e to learn, and the same can be said in Baldur's Gate 3. For your racial selection, I'd recommend anything that increases your strength and constitution. In the base version of D&D, that means half-orcs, shield dwarves aka mountain dwarves, dragonborn, and humans, all of whom can make excellent barbarians. Baldur's Gate 3 is launching a little differently. In Baldur's Gate 3, you can assign 2 ability points to a stat of your choice, and an extra 1 ability point to a different stat of your choice, no matter what racial selection you make. Ultimately, this means you can play whatever you want, just make sure you pick Strength and Constitution for that +2 and +1 stats respectively. If you really want to optimize, and if Larian keeps things similar to what they are in Early Access, Baldur's Gate 3, and D&D 5th edition, you can make a safe bet with the defenses of the Hill Dwarf. For your highest 2 stats, focus on pumping your strength to 17 when you choose your ability scores, and your constitution to 16. Whilst strength and constitution are going to be particularly important for us as a barbarian, I would also recommend a reasonably high dexterity, as it's going to increase our natural defenses. If you have any points left over when assigning ability scores, I would recommend taking them out of intelligence and wisdom and putting any left over into charisma. The reason for this is that barbarians often get natural intimidation checks, so having a high charisma can help with that. That being said, if you wanted to reduce your wisdom, intelligence, and charisma all to 8 and put everything in other stats with a 15 in dexterity, you can do that. Alternatively, if you want slightly better saves against punishing spells, choose wisdom instead. Barbarians are just so naturally beefy that they don't actually need to wear armor. They've got a feature called Unarmored Defense that lets them bump up their AC, or armor class, according to how high their constitution modifier is. A higher AC means enemies are more likely to miss you with their attacks. So yeah, armor isn't necessary for a barbarian, but having said that, maybe consider it. You are proficient in medium armor and below, and who knows when you'll find that cool breastplate or magic scale mail that will make you just that much more potent. Pound for pound, as a barbarian you also get more hit points than any other class in the game, and the only kind of armor that you can't wear is heavy armor. Well, I mean, you can wear it, but you don't get to use your cool features, and you're also not proficient in it, so all of your attacks are going to be worse. For your weapons, just make sure that you've got one of the big two-handed weapons from the game. So that's going to be something like a maul, a glaive, a halberd, a pike, a great axe, or a great sword. When you've got one of those in hand, you're all good to go. As a barbarian, your major features start at level 1, with Rage. Level 2 also gives you an important feature called Reckless Attack. But let's talk about Rage first. Rage is really simple. You use a bonus action to get really angry. While you're raging, you get to deal a little extra damage with every swing of your weapon. More importantly, you're literally too angry to die, as you get resistance, aka half damage, from most mundane weapon attacks. Anything that deals non-magical, slashing, piercing, and bludgeoning to you will be halved. Watch out for elemental damage like fire, poison, and acid though. You'll still take all of that. On each of your turns, things are really simple now. If you aren't raging, rage. Then go up to an enemy and hit them in the face with the attack action. Remember that if you can't reach your enemy, you can always use an action to throw a weapon or item from your inventory from range. The best thing to do this with, as far as weapons are concerned, are javelins, hand axes, spears, and any vials of harmful stuff like acid that you might find. But the reality is, there's a ton of inventive solutions with throwing things that you can have in your inventory. More on this later. At level 2, we get Reckless Attack, which is a decision we make whenever we choose the attack action. And for a barbarian who's out there breaking faces, it's a very easy one to make. You can choose to start your turn attacking recklessly. Doing so will mean you've got advantage on your attacks. This means that when you roll to attack, you roll 2 20-sided dice, or d20s, to hit your target, and keep whichever one rolls higher. Normal attacks only roll 1 d20 to hit, so recklessly attacking means that your chances to hit and critically hit are much better. The big drawback of reckless attack is that, well, the whole reckless bit does apply. All enemy attacks also have advantage to hit you. But then again, you're probably going to be fine, because while you're doing all of this, the likelihood is that you're raging, which means that you can take a ton of damage reduction. Those enemies aren't so scary when most of their damage is halved and you have a ton of hit points. At 3rd level, you get the defining choice of your Barbarian, your subclass. This is basically a flavor of Barbarian that you're going to play and get certain unique features from this point onwards. Each one comes with special abilities that give them unique flavor. To keep things simple, but also to leave you with some room for cool moments, we're going to choose the Berserker Barbarian. When you become a Berserker, your rage turns into frenzy. It means that as long as you're raging, you can use your bonus action to make another attack against a creature on your turn. By the time you reach 5th level, that means you're making 3 attacks per turn, which in itself is pretty strong. What's really cool is the way that Berserkers can interact with their environment using Frenzy though. It rewards creative players because you can either attack with your bonus action, or you can use a bonus action to throw objects. The higher your strength, the bigger the stuff you can throw, by the way. What's really funny is you can do this to creatures too. Got a horde of goblins attacking you? Pick one up and use it as a weapon. Throw one at another. Can you see a reasonably sized boulder? Pick that up and throw it at some unsuspecting foes. Has your wizard friend set the ground on fire somewhere? Pick up an enemy and throw them into the fire. And while you're at it, throw a jar of acid at them for good measure. A really neat trick as well is that you can use this in reverse to help your allies as well as harm your enemies. If you throw a healing potion at them, you will heal them, and you can now do this in Frenzy as a bonus action. Best of all though is the ability to throw enemies into a deep, dark chasm. The fall damage will kill most enemies instantly. Just beware though, because you probably won't be able to loot the body afterwards in most cases. Unless you happen to find the body afterwards, which, I mean, can be done, but not always. You'd be surprised what you can find falling from the ceiling in the Underdark. At 4th level, we get to pick up a feat. Either choose your ability score improvement, or pick up Great Weapon Master for a chance at even higher damage with your attacks, as long as you're using a heavy weapon. Let's just talk briefly about each of these options. With your ability score increases, you should look to bump your stats to even numbers like 14, 16, 18, and 20. True increases to your stats only occur at these even numbers. If you have a 17 strength, 14 dexterity, and 15 constitution, you should probably put an ability score into strength and constitution so that you then have 18 strength, 14 dexterity, and 16 constitution so that you can round out all your stats. If you would be left with an odd number in a stat, go ahead and throw it into your attack stat anyway, which for us is going to be strength. Great Weapon Master, on the other hand, is a massive game changer of a feat. Great Weapon Master, or its ranged cousin, Sharpshooter, apply a -5 penalty to hit any attack roll that you use them with. In other words, roll your 20-sided die to attack. When you get your roll, you add all your modifiers as usual, but at the end you reduce your final score by 5. If your attack score still exceeds the enemy's armor class or AC, you still hit, but because you took that -5 penalty to hit, you will deal an extra 10 damage, which is a massive increase. These buffs are automatically applied, but can be turned off manually in your ability hotbar down below. You'll see that they're on because there's a line around the edge of it that is circling it. Simply click that and it will turn it off. You can toggle this ability by going to your class abilities in the class tab that's at the very bottom of the ability bar. Barbarians make for really good Great Weapon Master feat users because of reckless attack. Advantage on their swings helps to mitigate the effect of that -5 penalty to hit somewhat. Now, with this feat, it's really tempting to use it all the time because of the extra damage, but the reality is that it isn't that simple. Bosses tend to have higher HP, sure, you need to chew through that, but they also generally have a higher AC, which means that by taking that -5 penalty to hit, you often end up missing the enemy in question. Instead, use it on their weaker minions, get them out of the turn order. They have lower AC, and getting them out of the turn order will often only take a single attack, considering that you've got that +10 to hit. It will always be better if you are fighting only one enemy, rather than a whole horde of them. At 5th level, we get that extra attack feature I was talking about earlier. You can now attack twice using your main action, and once more for your bonus action if you're raging. Remember that you can still use that bonus action to pick up and throw objects, so if you finish someone off, you might not need to move to get that last attack in. Just pull out a spear, throw that. Berserker Barbarians are really one of the most straightforward classes in D&D 5e, but they never really got to shine because they got hit with a nasty feature called exhaustion. Whenever they finished raging, they would take 1 level of exhaustion. Exhaustion in D&D 5e is not a mechanic that you'll see in Baldur's Gate 3, and it's really kind of nice that it's not here because exhaustion can cause all sorts of nasty ailments. It can cause you to have disadvantage on all of your rolls, could slow and eventually stop your movement, and if it got too much, it would literally kill you. In Baldur's Gate 3 though, this doesn't happen, and that makes the Berserker Barbarian a fun, powerful subclass that can compete with the Wild Heart and Wild Magic Barbarians thanks to its great action economy. What's even better is that you can have even more creative fun with it as you turn the various moves of your subclass on the enemy, throwing them all over the place. Tabletop D&D maps don't always have the necessary detail to allow you to pick up and throw objects or use terrain hazards to your advantage, but in Baldur's Gate 3, there are tons of things around the environment, and there are tons of hazards to throw your enemies into. And yeah, you can interact with a lot of it, so go wild. Become the meme you were born to be, and attack one goblin using another goblin. Even with a class like the Barbarian that has a lot of powerful simplicity, there's a great degree of other things that you can do with it thanks to the depth of Baldur's Gate 3. Hopefully by the time you reach level 5, you have a better idea of how to play a melee character. From there, the world is your oyster, so get out there and discover what it has waiting for you. In the meantime, my name has been MyNameIsByf, and this is Baldur's Gate and Beyond.